WWF Saturday Night's main event from January the 7th, 1989. This was actually taped the month prior, and it was at the USF Sundome in Tampa, Florida. We're coming off of Survivor Series 1988. You guys can listen to that discussion that we had in our Survivor Series 1988 review here on Rewind Wrestling. And you can sense that there is some jealousy between the mega powers of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. And that would be on display here as things are starting to heat up a bit with these two friends, and that is going to be one of the biggest things we learn on this particular show. But let's jump in. We start off with a hair versus hair match here on Saturday night's main event. Ron Bass versus Brutus Beefcake. And it kind of feels like this feud's been going on for a while at this point. When you really think about all sort of the different plot points along the way with these two. Bass jumps on Beefcake immediately, chokes him with Betsy the lasso. Meanwhile, Beefcake steals it away, and Bass starts to retreat. So the lasso has been the X factor so far. He keeps trying to get back in the ring, but Beefcake keeps pummeling him before he can make it back in. We get lots of punches from Beefcake here, but Ron Bass able to land the atomic drop to take over the match. Bass really is in full control of this one, and he kind of continues the destruction here, hits a pile driver, but he stops the ref's count, a move that we know never works. And so rather than getting the pin, he wants to put some more damage on Beefcake, so he keeps working on him. He stops the pin yet again, so he does it again. And I'm not sure if Ron Bass has ever seen a wrestling match, but this strategy will not end well. So finally, he goes for the actual pin. The two times he had before, he didn't want to do that. And Beefcake kicks out at 2. Then it is Brutus Beefcake ducking the clothesline and locking on the sleeper to win it at 7:40. And after the commercial break, it is Ron Bass getting his hair chopped here. So the overconfidence from the heel gets the best of him. And it is Brutus Beefcake keeping his hair, Ron Bass losing his. Probably not a surprise development when you considered where both men were at on the card at this particular point here in early 1989. All right, backstage ahead of our big match on the show, which remember was not always the main event at Saturday night's main event. Gene Okerlund with the Big Boss Man and Akeem. Slick starts to hype up these two dudes while Gene Okerlund is just really, rambling here about quite a few things. And then we get the interview with Hulk Hogan. It is going to be Akeem versus Hogan. And Okerlund says that Hogan is outmanned here going up against Big Boss Man and Akeem. But here comes Hogan's friend, Randy Savage. He'd do anything for him. So here comes Savage, and that is your setup. As it is, Akeem with Slick and the Big Boss Man taking on Hulk Hogan with Elizabeth in his corner, because we're all a team here, right? So, we get the cut in backstage during Hogan's entrance, where it is Randy Savage and Gene Okerlund watching on the TV here, right? On this monitor. And so, Savage, though, early on, seems a little bit concerned when we see Hogan holding the ropes for Elizabeth. Smell a little jealousy here, perhaps, just as we saw from Savage at the end of Survivor Series 1988, when Hogan picked up Elizabeth, paraded around in celebration, and Savage smelled a rat in that one. Hogan really taking it to Akeem here early on. I even put in my notes, he kind of just makes Akeem look like an idiot here. Then he does the same to the Big Boss Man and Slick. So Hogan's just fine early on with nothing but Elizabeth by his side, but still outnumbered, and that's going to come into play here shortly. Back in the ring, we have Hogan trying for the slam, but Akeem is able to turn the tide. But Hogan back on top again. He knocks the Big Boss Man off the apron. Akeem kind of takes hold of the arm here, but Hogan comes back yet again. He knocks Akeem down with the elbow to the dome, and then Boss Man doesn't look so great in this one either, after Hogan throws Akeem into him on the apron. So down goes Boss Man for another kind of spot here. Hogan throws Akeem to the corner, and guess what? Here it comes. Akeem pulls the ref in front of him, so we've got a ref bump in this one. Shenanigans are going to ensue. That naturally allows Akeem and the Boss Man to go to work here. Then we get another backstage cut in because, well, it's 2-on-1 right now. And it's Okerlund who was essentially asking Savage, hey, are you going to do something here? And Savage says, he'll be fine. Like, Savage really pushing the idea that he doesn't need to help the Hulkster here. And now, though, we've got Elizabeth running around backstage trying to find Savage. Hogan is down and out in the ring, so Elizabeth's on the move here to try to figure out if Hogan can get some help. So we get another cut-in of Savage, and it is Elizabeth yelling at him to come out and help. Gene Okerlund's acting here is so over the top. It is must-see, but it's why we love Mean Gene. And this is kind of the point in the match where Jesse Ventura also starts to lean in Savage directions here. So you're seeing that kind of twist where it's like, okay, Jesse's against Hogan, of course, but Jesse's starting to lean a little bit towards Savage to say, well, if Savage came out right now, he could come in and get Hogan disqualified. So Jesse, always a very astute analyst here, bringing up a pretty good point. So Hulk starts to Hulk up. He makes his comeback, and Savage is all happy backstage at this idea, right? All right, see, I told you, everything was going to be fine. He told everyone that the Hulkster would make his comeback. So then, it's big boot time, and then he slams Akeem, but here comes the Boss Man to trip Hogan before he can get the leg drop for the DQ at 8 minutes and 6 seconds. So, just when you think everything's fine, they pull the rug out from under you, and you get a DQ finish here, and it's the same scenario. We're back to 2-on-1 with Boss Man and Akeem against Hogan. So Elizabeth is basically in here watching Hogan getting beat with the nightstick. But that's where the problem starts. So instead of Akeem and Big Boss Man turning their attention to just Hogan, they now turn their attention to Elizabeth. And what do you know? Here comes Randy Savage with the chair, and after all this, Savage gets more jealous that Elizabeth is all over Hogan trying to help him. So Savage makes the save. They rid themselves of the big bad heels, but now Elizabeth's checking on Hogan because he just got the hell beat out of him, and Savage is more enraged here as he's very jealous that Elizabeth is checking on Hogan, trying to make sure he's okay, after Savage just came out to make sure she was okay. And Jesse Ventura smells a rift here. And Jesse, as we always say, is never wrong because he smells that something's up between the Mega Powers. This was so well done. I mean, this was beautiful storytelling in terms of just all the little beats that they added into this thing here. And this is, again, why I always keep saying, and throughout this Rewind series, and we're going to get to the full thing eventually, we're going to do a full Mega Powers kind of beat-by-beat storyline history and just dive into why this was so effective. And this right here is another great example. It's just you'd have the highs, you'd be brought back down, and then all of a sudden things escalate again. That's what happened in this match. And so Savage would not come down for Hogan, but he would come down for Elizabeth. And so even though the match is really, it's just a wrestling match to further the story, the advancement of that story was outstanding here in this particular instance. We know it would get even better once we get to that point we will get to in the next few episodes. But it was just a tremendous job by all parties here because having the unique idea to have the backstage cut in of being able to have our eyes on Savage as this is going down, you're putting the pressure on Randy Savage to make that decision, and each time he's making the decision you ultimately think he's going to make, but you're still like, uh-oh, that's not good for the Mega Powers. It's not good for Hulk Hogan. And so, yeah, this was so well done here. Bravo to all parties involved, and yes, this would certainly escalate things much quicker now after this particular setup here at Saturday night's main event. So, exhale, because everything after this is going to feel like a little bit of a step down. So, coming out of that, you have the Honky Tonk Man with Jimmy Hart taking on the Ultimate Warrior, the Intercontinental Championship on the line. We remember back at SummerSlam 1988, which we've done the review on that here if you want to check that show out. It was the Ultimate Warrior dethroning the Honky Tonk Man as Intercontinental Champion in total squash fashion. A little brawling on the outside here early on, which does result in Warrior basically just picking up Honky and throwing him in the ring, back and forth until Jimmy Hart throws Honky the megaphone while the referee's back is turned, but Honky hammers the Warrior with it several times, so the referee has no idea what's going on here. Surprise, surprise. And even more shenanigans as we've got Jimmy Hart choking out the Warrior while Honky's distracting the referee. However, Warrior kind of back in control. He bounces Honky's head off the turnbuckle about 95 times here. Then it's a clothesline, running splash. Honky gets the knees up, but then it's the flying tackle from the Ultimate Warrior here to win it at 5:07. He retains the Intercontinental Championship. This was what it was, but in a very impossible spot, coming out of just, again, all the different stuff that was thrown at you in that previous match with Hulk Hogan and Akeem. So Warrior retains the title. Everyone knew that's how it was going to happen. Heels had some shenanigans here. Didn't work, and that was pretty much that. All right, backstage, Slick is ecstatic that the Twin Towers have destroyed Hulk Hogan. And then Slick, also a very aware manager, starts planting more seeds about how close the mega powers actually are. So that's the thing, too. They're not just completely hitting you over the head with it, right? They're not just flat out telling you, oh, look at this, look at that. Now, Jesse threw in a few of those lines to make you at least consider the idea. But it's Jesse. He's the heel commentator, so you're not going to take everything he says and just be like, oh, well, he's 100% right. You're going to be kind of in the position where you have to think about it a little bit. So I like the fact that they did that as well. They weren't just saying, oh, look at how clear Randy Savage is so pissed off that he's going to turn on Hulk Hogan. They didn't really go that far with it, but you kind of have the heel manager here pushing the idea of how close are these guys actually, and now that makes you think a little bit more given what we saw in and after that particular match. So, all right, I said things couldn't really, stay at that same high of Hulk Hogan and Akeem. Well, backstage, Jesse interviews Bobby the Brain Heenan and the Red Rooster. They make fun of Rooster for a few minutes. What a payoff we'd get with these two here in several months. But the Red Rooster with Bobby Heenan take on Tito Santana. And it is Heenan mic'd up for this match, so I always appreciate that. He pretty much gives the Red Rooster hell from the very beginning, so, it's Heenan just playing up all this. So Heenan goes over, yells back and forth with George Steinbrenner, so that's another notable thing here as well. The Rooster and Tito working hard, but really the focus is all about Bobby Heenan just yelling at the Red Rooster here, just berating him, right? And so, again, he's mic'd up, so you're kind of seeing them push that as the big theme of this one. After several minutes, we get the shoving match on the outside between Heenan and Rooster. This continues on for a while. Tito rolls up Rooster for the victory at 7 minutes and 27 seconds. This went way longer than probably anyone expected it to, but like I said, it really wasn't the story of the match in the ring. It was kind of everything else. So after the match, Heenan slaps the Rooster, and then the Rooster clocks him in the corner several times before throwing him off the turnbuckle. We would get the payoff for this here eventually in terms of like the bigger payoff. This was kind of something, though, that you knew was going to happen, and they got to it here. But, yeah, this was just kind of inevitable with these particular two. So, all right, that's going to lead us to our main event of Saturday night's main event, even though, like we said, that wasn't always the order, in terms of importance on this particular show based on when it aired and all that. But it is Mr. Perfect versus Koko B. Ware. Before the match, forgot to mention, Perfect talks about sort of the birth of the Perfect Plex. So it's here, folks. The Perfect Plex has arrived. And so Koko tries to make the fans think that he has a chance in this one, but we know he doesn't. He does get a lot of momentum early on. Jesse even points out that he's out wrestling Perfect early in this match, so that's not going to last long, though. But Koko kind of just runs himself into the corner, and then the Perfect Plex happens to give Perfect the squash win here pretty much at 3 minutes and 10 seconds. That's all you needed to know. It was to give you a look at the Perfect Plex and that Mr. Perfect is perfect, and that's your story here. And what would be a pretty long stretch of Mr. Perfect staying perfect in the WWF. But, all right, backstage. If you thought we were done with the drama, we're not yet, because this is the real main event right here. The Mega Powers seem to be just fine. Everything looks okay. These guys are here, and Hogan has no problem with Savage's delay in helping him. They breathe the same air, they drink the same water, and they sleep the same sleep. Just drink that one in for a second. They breathe the same air, they drink the same water, and they sleep the same sleep. That's what Hogan says here. Then Savage says his body... This is incredible. Savage says his body hurt when Hogan was getting attacked. Just this storyline, I'm telling you, it doesn't get any better than this. A man talking about how his own body hurt when he saw his partner getting attacked. Hogan then says he felt like he was getting choked when Elizabeth was getting choked by the boss man. This is tremendous. Oh, and then we get the super handshake from these two. So it's back. The super duper secret handshake is back between Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. They're all feeling the same sensations in their body when things happen to the other member of the team. Everyone seems happy and also very weird at the same time. I'm sure this will all work out for this group here moving forward. But that was Saturday night's main event. I do chuckle a bit because it all, when I'm reading it, just sounds ridiculous. But in all honesty, it's really what made this thing so effective is that they would go in one direction, they try to bring you back to the road, and then all of a sudden, things are going to veer off course again, we know, here in the very near future. So that was Saturday night's main event. The Mega Powers tension was just good stuff. There's no other way to put it. Recommended matches, I mean, I would have to put the Hogan and Akeem match on there. It wasn't probably the best match on the show. Then again, if you think about the contenders, it may have actually been the best match on the show. It just is not a match to say that, you have to watch it for the wrestling, but it is pretty much recommended and honestly must see to see all the stuff going on within the match with Savage and Elizabeth and all that. And I think, too, something that gets overlooked in this whole thing, you can't underestimate the impact that the foils had here in Boss Man and Akeem, and even Slick to a lesser extent, because we all know where this is headed. And them being able to, again, play their roles so well, I think, as the heels, that just did so much, I think, for this particular storyline. And, they're going to play an even bigger role as we get to, one of the next plot points here. And so I just think that probably still isn't talked about enough to this day, is just how good the Twin Towers were in this particular role, playing off of the Mega Powers. You needed a team like that to be able to make this so much better, and that's why it reached the heights that it did. So an enjoyable show here, mostly for all the stuff involving those two teams in particular, but hey, you've got a little perfect plex, you've got Bobby Heenan and the Red Rooster going at it. What more could you want? This was, again, a pretty fine episode, I thought, of Saturday night's main event. But there you go. So we're continuing on here in early 1989, and we know the Royal Rumble will be coming up as well, so we're going to do that one here on the Rewind series. So check that out. As you know, we're going through all these different eras in the WWE/WWF, whether it is the Golden Era or Golden Age, whichever one you want to call it, the New Generation Era, the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era. We got videos/audio podcasts up for all of these eras here at Rewind Wrestling. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoy this journey back into wrestling history, because this is Rewind Wrestling, where we hit play on wrestling's past. And let me know your thoughts on what you remember from this particular episode, Saturday night's main event, January 7th, 1989. And what were your thoughts on the Mega Powers at the time? Were you kind of making any predictions as to what was going to happen next? What did you think about the way they were telling the story? All that good stuff. Appreciate you listening and or watching, and let me know your thoughts on WWF Saturday night's main event from January 7th, 1989.